I was 7 years old when my father closed the door for the last time. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't hug us. He didn't look back. He just grabbed a small bag, tucked something inside that I couldn't see, and walked down our gravel driveway like we didn't exist. Outside, the news was playing loud on every neighbor's TV. People were panicking. The smell of something burning was already coming through the windows. And he just left. My mother stood frozen in the doorway with my 3 younger siblings clutching her dress. I was the oldest, the one who understood the most, the one who was going to carry this the longest. For 20 years, I hated him. For 20 years, I believed he was the most cowardly man who ever lived. Until I found the box.
My name is Ellen, and this is the story that took me a lifetime to understand. When my father left, we were living in a small town in rural West Virginia, one of those places where everyone knows your name, where summers smelled like fresh-cut grass and wood smoke, and winters felt like the whole world went quiet. We were happy, or at least I thought we were. My father's name was Thomas. He was a carpenter. Big hands, rough and calloused, always with sawdust under his fingernails. He taught me how to hammer my first nail. He told me that a house is built from the inside out. I didn't understand what that meant back then. My mother, Carol, was an elementary school teacher. Steady, calm, the kind of woman who doesn't cry in front of her children even when she's breaking apart on the inside. After he left, she didn't say his name for months. We didn't ask. We learned very quickly that his name was something that hurt. The war came fast, the way all terrible things do. First as rumors on the radio, then as fear in people's eyes, then as something real and unavoidable. Our town changed overnight. Young men disappeared. Some went to serve, some ran, and the ones who stayed went silent. My father was one of the ones who disappeared, but he didn't go to serve, and that was what none of us could forgive. The months that followed were the hardest of my life. My mother sold the furniture we didn't absolutely need. First, the big armchair where my father used to read after dinner, then the dining table, then the grandfather clock he had inherited from his own father. Every object that left that house was a small death. We were left with the minimum: 4 beds, a space heater, a small kitchen table. The neighbors talked. In small towns, they always do. I heard Mrs. Patterson from across the road tell someone at the grocery store, "Carol should have seen it coming. Men like Thomas always show their true colors when things get hard." My mother heard it too. I knew because she squeezed my hand too tight that afternoon walking home. School was worse. A boy named Derek told me one day, right in front of the whole class, "Your dad ran away because he's a coward. My dad says he's a traitor." I went to the bathroom and cried alone until the bell rang. Then I dried my face, walked out, and never cried about it in front of anyone again. I learned that from my mother. Store the pain like you store firewood. Keep it for when you need it most. The months turned into years. Our town felt the distance of the conflict in quiet, grinding ways. Families losing sons, food getting expensive, jobs disappearing, a kind of gray exhaustion settling over everything like dust. My mother worked double shifts when she could. My siblings and I took turns watching the little ones. By 10, I was cooking dinner alone. By 12, I was patching everyone's clothes. We never got a letter from him, not a phone call, not a single word. And that silence was worse than any insult, because silence said, "You're not worth an explanation." What my mother did in those years deserves to be told out loud. 4 kids, no money, no husband, a world turned upside down. And Carol did not fall apart. She was up before sunrise every single day. She heated water on the stove. She made breakfast out of whatever there was. Sometimes that was just toast and a scraping of peanut butter. She sent us to school in clean clothes, even if she'd washed them at midnight. When my brother's teacher needed materials and the school had run out of paper, my mother copied the pages by hand. When the second winter came brutal and the heating bill was more than she had, it was her who figured out how to keep us warm without anyone knowing how close we were to the edge. She never told us we might not make it, but I knew. I could see it in her eyes when she thought no one was watching. And what I remember most from those years isn't the hunger or the cold.
It's the image of my mother sitting under the kitchen lamp at night, taking in alterations and sewing repairs for neighbors. Eyes tired, back bent, but her hands always moving, like stopping meant surrendering. I made myself a promise in those years that someday I would give her the life she deserved, that everything he never gave her, I would. And I made myself another promise too. If I ever saw him again, I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me cry. 20 years have passed. I'm an adult now. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I have a job, a small apartment that's mine, a life I built with my own hands. I go back to West Virginia every chance I get to see my mother. My mother is aging well. Her hair is white now, but her eyes are the same. She still sews, even though she doesn't have to anymore. She says her hands need something to do so her mind doesn't wander too far. One Sunday in October, I drive up to visit her, and something feels different. Not sick, not sad. Different. Still, in a way I don't recognize. She makes tea, sits across from me at the kitchen table, and says in a voice that's completely calm, "Ellen, there's something I need to show you. I waited until I thought you were ready." She takes me to the bedroom, opens the big oak wardrobe, the same one that's been in that house as long as I can remember. And from the very back, she pulls out a metal box, small, rust on the corners, a simple latch. She sets it on the bed and hands it to me. The key is tucked inside the lining at the bottom of the wardrobe. I found it 3 years ago. I decided to wait to give it to you in person. I stare at the box. My hands feel cold suddenly. "What is this, Mom?" She doesn't answer right away. She looks at me for a moment. Then she says, "It's the explanation your father never gave us." The box opens with a small click. Inside, there are letters, a lot of them, folded carefully, some yellowed with age, and beneath the letters, a document, and beneath the document, a photograph. I pick up the photograph first. My father, younger, in uniform, not the uniform I expected. My hands start shaking. I read the letters in order. They're from him. They're dated. The first one is from 3 weeks before he left. I'm not going to read all of them out loud because some things are too painful to repeat slowly. But what they say, in essence, is this. My father had been recruited, not by the side he believed in, by the other side. He had been threatened. He had been told that if he didn't cooperate, his family would pay the consequences. And he had done what he did to protect us. He left so they wouldn't come for us. But there's another letter, one that wasn't written by him. It's written by another man, a name I don't recognize, dated 2 years after my father left. It says my father was captured, that he tried to desert, that he was executed, that he died saying the names of his children. I close the box. I look at my mother. Her eyes are dry, like always. "When did you know?" I ask. I always suspected. The certainty came 3 years ago, when I found the box. "Why didn't you tell us?" She's quiet for a moment. Then she says,
Because you needed to grow up first. And sometimes to grow up, you need to believe the world has simple villains. That night, I don't sleep. I sit on my childhood bed with the box in my lap, and I think about everything I built on a story I told myself. 20 years hating a man who died protecting us. 20 years carrying a rage that never had the right target. And the hardest thing to process isn't the grief for him. It's the shame. The shame of having believed at 7 years old and at 20 and every year in between, he abandoned me, when the truth was that he sacrificed himself. There is something that breaks inside you when you realize the story you've been telling yourself your whole life was incomplete. It's not like discovering a lie, it's worse. It's like discovering that the lens you used to look at everything was warped, and everything you ever saw through it was warped too. My mother comes into the room at 2 a.m. She sits next to me without saying anything.
And for the first time in my adult life, I cry in front of her. I cry like the 7-year-old I was, the one who didn't understand, the one who hated when she should have waited. My mother takes my hand. She doesn't say everything is okay. She doesn't say he forgives me. She doesn't say any of that. She just says, "He knew you. He knew you'd understand when the time came." "How are you so calm?" I ask, and she says something I will carry for the rest of my life. Because I knew him better than anyone, and I never stopped knowing him. The next morning, with a clearer head, I start asking questions. How did you find the box? My mother tells me. 3 years ago, the old oak wardrobe started failing. One of the hinges had cracked. She called a carpenter from town to fix it. When the man removed the bottom drawer to get better access, he found a false panel in the floor of the wardrobe. My mother recognized the craftsmanship immediately. "It was your father's work. He built that wardrobe himself. He always put hidden compartments in his furniture. He used to say that in hard times, the most important thing is knowing where to keep what matters." And there was the box.
But that's not everything, my mother tells me. She also tells me that after finding the letters, she didn't sit still. She went to see the local historian, an elderly man in town who had spent his life documenting the wartime history of their region. She showed him the letters, the document, the photograph. He authenticated them, confirmed the name of the man who had written the last letter, tracked down his descendants. My mother, in silence for 3 years, had been rebuilding my father's story. Why, I ask? So that when I told you, it wouldn't just be a suspicion, so that it would be the complete truth. I stare at her and can't speak. This woman who sewed clothes at midnight and stretched grocery money to the last dollar and never once fell apart in front of us, had been doing this alone, in silence, for 3 years, always moving. What my mother had gathered was more than I expected, not just the letters and the document, also a written statement from the historian, a copy of a wartime military record that listed my father's name and the unit he had been forcibly assigned to, additional photographs the historian had pulled from archived collections. And something else, a letter from the International Red Cross, dated decades ago, that had never reached us because we had moved. The historian had tracked it down too. The letter confirmed my father's death. It mentioned that he had attempted to send word to his family before he died, that he had left a message. The message was simple, just 4 words: "Take care of them." With those 4 words, something finishes breaking inside me, and something, at the same time, finishes mending. because the hate I carried for 20 years doesn't disappear all at once, but it starts to change, to become something heavier and cleaner at the same time. Grief, admiration, gratitude that came too late, and a question I can't shake. How much don't we know about the people we love? How many times do we judge without the full story? 2 weeks after that conversation, my mother calls me. There's something in her voice I don't immediately recognize. Then I place it. Urgency. Quiet, but urgency. "Ellen, you need to come back." "What happened?" "They found something. During the construction of the new county building, they were excavating and they found a mass grave from the war era." My heart stops. "And?" "The historian called me. There are identification tags, documents. They're working with the state to identify who's there." I don't need her to say more. I get in the car and drive back that same night. The historian meets us at his home. He's a small man, white-haired, with the kind of eyes that have seen too much and chosen to keep looking anyway. He leads us into his study, which is lined floor to ceiling with binders and folders organized with a precision that speaks of a lifetime of work. He shows us the documents. The remains found are going to be identified through DNA analysis. The process will take months. But among the documents recovered near the gravesite, there is a list. Names. My father's name is on the list. I sit down. My mother stands beside me, her hand on my shoulder. The historian explains that the grave corresponds to a mass execution of deserters and political prisoners, that these men were killed without trial, that for decades no one spoke about it because it was convenient to forget. But forgetting is not the same as truth, and the truth, sooner or later, comes to the surface, like those remains that 60 years of soil could not bury forever. The months that follow are intense and strange. The identification process moves forward. A commission is formed. Other families come forward. There are meetings, paperwork, testimonies. The historian is at the center of it all, coordinating with patience what had been left untouched for decades. Something happens during this process that I didn't expect. Some of the men who gave the execution orders are still alive, very old, living quietly, a few of them with official recognition and community standing they never should have had. I won't name them here, but I will say what happened. The commission submitted a formal report. The names of the executed men were officially recognized as victims of wartime crimes. The records of those responsible were reopened. There was no prison. They were too old for that. But there was something that in some ways cuts deeper than prison: the loss of the narrative. They had been honored in their lifetimes as respectable men, and history, in the end, called them by their real name. My father was also called by his real name. Not traitor, not coward, not the man who abandoned his family. Victim, resistor, a father who tried to protect his children until the very end. That recognition doesn't give me back anything I lost, but it gives something back to him, and that matters. 6 months after the grave is found, the DNA analysis confirms what we already knew. We arrange a burial. Small, family only. My mother, my siblings, their children. The historian comes too. We bring flowers from my mother's garden. She chooses them herself, the same ones she planted the year he left, that she tended every year without any of us ever asking her why. Now I understand why. At the burial, the historian hands us one more thing: an envelope.
which had been among the documents recovered near the gravesite, protected inside a sealed tin can, which is why it survived decades underground. A letter, written by my father, addressed to my siblings and me. I won't read it in full, some things belong only to family, but there's one part I want to share, because I believe it's the part he would have wanted to travel furthest. I didn't leave because I didn't love you. I left because I loved you too much to stay. I know you won't understand now, maybe you never will, but if you ever find this, I want you to know that every decision I made thinking of you. That I became a carpenter because I wanted to build things that would last for you. That I studied every crack in our house to know how to make it stronger. And when the storm came, I did the only thing I knew how to do. I put my body between the wind and you. A house is built from the inside out. That's what he told me when I was little. Now I understand what he meant.
2 years have passed since the burial. My mother is still in West Virginia. She still sews, though now she does it by the light of a bigger window we had installed. She says the new light changes her mood. I visit more often now. Something shifted between us since that afternoon with the metal box. There are no more silences that hurt, only silences that rest. My siblings learned the full story. Each of them processed it differently. The youngest cried for hours. My sister said very little and then disappeared for 3 days, and when she came back, her eyes were quiet. My brother, the one who looks most like my father, went for a long walk in the woods alone and came back with his arms full of branches, which he used to build something, a small wooden frame. No picture inside it yet. He said he was still thinking about what deserved to go in it. I think I understand that. Some spaces need to be left empty first before you know what they're meant to hold. The old oak wardrobe is still in my mother's bedroom. The hinge was fixed. The false compartment at the bottom is still there, empty now. My mother says she doesn't want it sealed. So the air can get in, she says. So it remembers that even in the most hidden places, something important can live. My mother's garden still has the same flowers he planted before he left. Every spring they come back, without anyone replanting them, without anyone asking. They come back because they were planted with roots deep enough to survive the winter, like us. I spent 20 years carrying the wrong weight. The anger I aimed at him should have gone to the war, to the people who started it, to the ones who turned good men into impossible choices. He didn't abandon me. He protected me the only way he could. And without knowing it, I looked for him in every man who built things, in every person who worked with their hands, in every silence that said more than words. I had been carrying him inside me the whole time. I just didn't know his name. Now I do. And the last time I visited his grave, I told him the only thing I had taken 30 years to say. I understand now, Dad. It took me too long, but I understand. The wind moved the branches of the tree growing beside the cemetery fence. Maybe it was just the wind. Or maybe it was him telling me that was enough, that it had always been enough. What this family went through isn't all that different from what so many people deal with in silence, behind closed doors, not knowing how to get out. There is an ebook in the description that might be the first step towards something different. Until the next story.